Welcome to episode 39 of the Hard Truth About B2B e-commerce. I'm your co-host Isaiah Bollinger, and I'm here with Tim. Tim, you're outdressing all of us. I think this might be the fanciest you've been on the podcast. So,
I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they brought this up again too. I decided to go back into the closet and look at like office shirts, things that I used to wear when I was in the office all the time. So that's what this is. I just pulled it out. It's time, I guess, right?
It's so funny because
But
I did an interview, a Zoom interview. We're hiring, and you could tell the guy was like kind of trying to dress up for the interview, and I'm just so not dressed up anymore. I'm just like, well, it's Zoom. Like, this is the first interview. Like, if this is just like round one. We're just trying to see if you're even a fit. But I'm glad you dressed up. But we don't really care that that.
No, I think I'm going to go right back to my T-shirt next week, folks. So if anyone's watching this on YouTube, don't think it's a big permanent change. I think this is going to just go right back. So anyway, thanks, Isaiah. I'm Timothy Peterson, the co-host here on the Hard Truth About B2B e-commerce. Just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Punch Out To Go. They are a global B2B integration company specializing in connecting commerce business platforms with e-procurement and ERP applications. Punch Out To Go's iPaaS technology seamlessly links business applications to automate the flow of purchasing data. And with their solution, you can immediately reduce integration complexities for Punch-Out catalogs, electronic purchase orders, invoices, and other B2B sales order automation documents to accelerate your business results. So thank you to our sponsor. And then Isaiah, I am really excited to have a part two for a guest that we had on earlier. So please
Yeah, I
continue.
think this is our first part two, correct? I think this might be our
I
first.
think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's our first part two, and I've I've known Nessim now for almost 10 years. That's how long ago it was when we first met in Boston. And, we just kind of stayed in touch through social media and things like that. And ironically, we both kind of ended up, we weren't even really doing B2B commerce, either of us back then. So just kind of funny how we both ended up in that space. We were both kind of obviously in software, but Nessim Btesh comes from a company all the way in Panama, South America, and their episode was episode 14, and what we titled it was how Nessim has basically automated 100% of B2B e-commerce sales at the time, because this was during the pandemic. It was like May, so like everything was like shut down last year, and they had to go from like showroom, barely having e-commerce sales to like, doing business all online because people couldn't go to the showroom. So it's episode 14 if you want to see the original episode. I'm excited to do this because I had some connection issues. I was on vacation, so I did my best on that episode. But Nessim, tell us about your business, and just tell, for people that haven't seen that episode, this might be their first episode listening. Tell us about the business, and give us like the background on you and kind of all of that, and kind of how you
Sure.
guys got to that.
So we're a family-owned business that my grandfather started about 40 years ago. We started as a distributor, and now we're essentially a brand manufacturer. We created our own brands in
Oh,
home
wow.
decor, Christmas, and back to school, and then we distributed throughout Latin America, all the three brands, and we're constantly studying whatever is happening in the market is and the tendency in the market and the tendencies, and we're developing new products. And my background is mostly in software. I'm a software developer myself, and I've been coding and anything from the restaurant industry all the way to sort of to now the B2B e-commerce world, in the e-commerce world, which is a lot more complex than the restaurant industry. And it's always been in software, both doing back end, front end, and then I did some marketing analytics at a certain point, and all over the place, I guess.
So tell us about, I thought what was interesting, and I know we did cover this in the last episode, but I think initially you had evaluated, Shopify, Magento, a bunch of different platforms, and kind of came to the conclusion like, hey, B2B e-commerce is complex. We need something really custom for our needs. And you ended up going more of a custom route. So can you tell us about that? And then, we'll kind of jump into today's world where you're at now. But
Sure. So I guess we started out with Shopify. So our first test in e-commerce was Shopify. We built out a Shopify website without pricing, and then we soon came into realization that we needed to have the same pricing that we had offline, both online. And we ended up doing some like custom fields in Shopify to have our entire price list, which is huge. It's around 30 prices per product.
depending on
And
the customer and the type of customer, and yeah.
yeah, depending on the customer and type of customers. And that ended up backfiring just because we essentially broke our Shopify team, and we broke our Shopify installation. I don't know how that happens, but um, yeah, it was crazy. So we soon came to the realization that we needed to move away from Shopify, and we looked at Magento, we looked at New Order, we looked at a bunch of different options, but from our business was so complex and it had so many complexity in the processes that it was very hard to get a single software that would cover at least 50% of what we were doing.
Yeah.
And seeing that I had the experience of building something from scratch, I'm like, I'm just gonna try this and see what happens. And we did the first version in like 3 months, just like a really basic website with add to cart and checkout, and ended up working. So we kept improving it over the years, and when it's been, I think, about 2 years or a year and a half now, and it's been going great. I mean, we've done maybe like 700 failures of like features that we pushed out and they haven't worked. But I think that maybe like 10 of them worked, and those are the ones that we're keeping. So every week we
That's a
try some.
really important message for people, because I think that especially in B2B e-commerce, especially in B2B, these companies, they're just kind of like, oh, I pay for something, it's gonna make me money, it should work. But what
Yeah.
you're saying is you've done a lot of different experiments, and actually only a small subset of that has worked. But that small subset has essentially made you guys a lot of money and paid for all the fail. Would you agree that it's kind of like paid for the failures? Is that?
Yeah. So I think that at least maybe like 1% of the features actually worked, and the rest were like, at a certain point we even tried doing like guided buying with like through the website, and it didn't work. So we've tried so many different things, and a lot of them just ended up not working.
So wow, this is really awesome. I don't even think we talked about this in the last episode. So I think we're gonna run out of time here because I can tell that I'm gonna have so many questions that
Well,
you know.
I have one question I want to put out there already. You mentioned the manufacturing piece. Could you just give us our listeners a little taste of that?
Yeah,
There are all the different kinds of things you manufacture.
yeah.
Sure. So we work with a lot of factories in China and India and throughout the world. And what we do is we study the tendencies in the market, and in the market, from anything from colors all the way to like let's say like the green movement and something like that. And
How
we
do you
develop
study
products
that though? How
around.
do you guys study that? Sorry, I'm trying to really
Well,
understand.
that's like a top secret sort of like
Okay, okay,
recipe we
okay.
can get
That's
into
fine. That's
that.
fine.
I
Um,
understand. I understand.
yeah,
We
but
won't let
yeah,
you
so
give all the trade secrets away. So yeah,
yeah.
continue. Sorry.
But yeah, that's what we do essentially. So we manufacture whatever, all the products in China, and then we ship it throughout Latin America.
Have you guys tried to manufacture locally, or did you just not even bother? You're like, you know what, China.
I think that Panama is such a small country that there's like no manufacturing, or maybe like food or something like that. There's like no manufacturing here.
Wow. Okay. So you
Yeah,
didn't really, that
sure.
wasn't a serious consideration.
Yeah.
Um, and then tell us about two kind of a two-part question. Tell us about the technical stack that you decided on, and how that's worked for you or didn't work for you and how that's evolved. And then tell us about the evolution of these features and how what's worked. So maybe people can avoid some of those 700 failures.
So we have sort of like a headless CMS. We have a backend which uses a technology called WebSockets, which essentially allows for low latency connections. So
Yep.
Hmm.
In Latin America, so the standard is that the internet doesn't work very well. So I mean, throughout Latin America, the expectation is that the internet is going to be intermittent. So what we ended up doing is using a technology that allows for low latency. So that's what we have in the
Can
back
you
end.
explain that technology? I believe you're using like React and some of the kind of API, and I think they call it, well, there's a term, the WebSocket, there's another term for it that my developer uses, but I think it's the same thing. Sorry, go ahead.
So we use React, single page application, React in the front end that renders on the server, so that you can have the SEO benefits as well as the as sort of the single page application benefits, the speed of a single page application. And then the backend is built on Meteor.js.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
I,
Oh,
I
okay.
I wouldn't recommend Meteor.js if you have 100,000 users. We don't, so that's why it works for us.
Yeah. So on the back end, they could use various different other, technologies, but in theory, I think React is becoming kind of the leading PWA framework. That's what we're seeing out in the market, and it seems to be working very well for this kind of headless
Yeah.
paradigm shift, which, yeah.
And PWA works amazing because it allowed us to essentially, so it allowed us to push the sort of our PWA in the App Store, Play Store, and web. And it allows us to be in all the app stores and all the distributions out there without having to have multiple source codes.
Yeah.
So
So
the
you have one
same
native
code,
React, and then you're using that on all the different
Okay.
platforms,
yeah,
correct?
which is amazing because it saves a ton of money and a ton of time.
Yep. Yep. And is that React Native? Are you using the React Native components for iOS or?
Oh no, we're using just React, just normal React JS.
Okay, gotcha. Wow. So then, and then another benefit that I think you mentioned is also, does this help you guys with the integrations? Because you kind of bring in different systems from I know you have a CMS. Can you talk about kind of how you're managing all the operations and how that kind of goes into the front end?
So sure. So most of our systems or ERP, it's in a local network, which it's not connected to the internet for incoming connections. So what essentially means is that it's protected from the outside.
Yep.
So what we did is that we created sort of like a CMS from scratch in the cloud essentially,
Hmm.
and then we connect from the front end to the CMS as well as to other applications that we need for like recommendations and ERP integration and stuff like that. But we essentially put sort of like a middleman in between. So our CMS is essentially like a middleman in between our ERP and the website.
Gotcha. So you have middle layer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so now tell us about these features. So, maybe tell us about, obviously we can't go through all 700 features. It would probably, that failed. We probably spend like 4 days on that, but tell us about maybe some of the ones that you thought would work and then failed. And then tell us about obviously the successful ones and maybe some advice, so someone could maybe they only have to fail 200 times instead of 700 next time.
I think I'm a coding nerd, so I'm gonna tell you too. Most of the things I made it for me, not for the client, just because I wanted to have fun.
Hmm.
But the one that I always remember is that so I mentioned in the first episode that for us, guiding the client through a certain buying process is very important. So given that logic, we thought about maybe doing sort of like a guided experience in the website with audio and everything, and it just didn't work. Clients didn't want to be guided, like want to be restricted into like a certain like guided experience with audio and everything, and that was one of the failures we had. We actually removed the code. Nobody used it. I think clients enter and they left immediately. It was very funny.
Well, it's interesting you brought that up because I was talking with somebody about car sales and guided experiences and how that's becoming something, I guess, just on the B2C side that people are looking into very seriously. Just so you get whatever loan approvals and whatever, and then go. And it's like takes you step by step by step through, you know, which brands, which colors, which dollar values, which customizations. And that's been, you know, something that when tested out that's very appealing. It's interesting that that wasn't something that really worked in B2B.
Yeah, I think it depends on the quantity of products that the customers have to see, because
Yeah.
our customers have to see like a few thousand products to buy 100.
Yeah, that makes
You're
sense
buying,
because yeah, you're buying one car, so you want to be guided to the one car. You're not buying 100 cars, but when you're buying from, you know, their business, you know, you're looking at thousands of Christmas products, and it's hard to guide them through that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a
um,
good. So maybe you would recommend don't do that if you have a large product set.
yeah. So
um,
Exactly.
it turns out that so one of the funny things that one of our failure success I guess was that um, most of the world is moving to hyper personalization in websites. So essentially you do like a search query and they show you maybe like tables that you're most likely to buy. So it turns out that for us that didn't work very well, because again the client had to be guided through a certain experience. So what we did that instead of using sort of like hyper personalized recommendations for the search, we ended up doing sort of like a ranking for the products, sort of like a global ranking. So for for what we want you to buy, as opposed to what we think is best for you, and that actually ended up working really well. So that was one of the failures.
Kind of like a Netflix top 10, would you say? Are you familiar with like the
Yeah,
Netflix like
exactly.
US top 10? And it's funny, I was in Mexico, and it's like the Mexico top 10 was not it was completely different than the US top 10.
Yeah,
So would you say it's more similar to that, and that worked kind of like a
yeah. It's
universal?
essentially like comparing Netflix top 10 to Netflix recommendations.
Hmm,
Yeah.
gotcha. Because people maybe they want to see like what are other people buying, and that seemed to resonate, you think?
Yeah, I think that seems to well, we don't actually tell you that's what everybody else is buying, but yeah.
Oh, you don't. You just
Yeah, we don't.
recommend it without oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. Tell us about the video feature, because I really like that. I thought that was really interesting, and it shows that you really started to get more in tune with the sales reps. I know this was something exciting that you told me about a few months ago, and I
Sure.
know you don't want to get too much into all the secret sauce of everything you guys do, but just maybe if you keep it high level, that's fine.
Sure. So, like you mentioned, we work very closely with our sales rep. Essentially, like we're in the same office now that we're back in the office. We're in the same office, so I'm going downstairs every day just to talk to them and get their feedback. And what we do is that I noticed that throughout the buying process online, most of our clients want to see sort of like you can imagine like a three-dimension version of the product. So they want to get a sense of how the product looks in a
Yeah.
video or in the real world. And I noticed that most of the sales rep were sending via WhatsApp the videos of the products to a client, and I'm like, this is redundant because they're filming the same product like four or five times and sending it to five different clients. It doesn't work. So what we did is that we in their portals or in their version of their CMS, because we have a different CMS for the sales rep, we put like essentially like a button that says upload video. You select the product and then you upload the video into the profile of the client, so that it in the profile of the product, so that the video it's for all the clients, not just for one.
Yeah, so you
uh,
could have like, okay, I took a
Mm-hmm.
video of the Christmas thing, Christmas tree decoration. Now every client that asks for it, I just attach it or send it, and I don't have to take 20 videos over and over on WhatsApp, basically.
yeah, and it turns out that products that have videos to sell more, like 100 or 200% more
Yeah.
when you
So
look
it's
at the analytics.
it's an easy win to
So
increase. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are there products that don't really lend themselves to video? Because that's another topic that I find kind of interesting, because, you know, people are spending a lot of time and money doing this. But are there products that really don't make sense to do video today?
Um, so yeah, I'm guessing that yes, but we give the option to a sales rep. They upload the video to whatever the client is asking, and we're automating that process, like adding a button into every product where their client is essentially just going to press it, and the video request goes directly into a sales rep email, essentially. And yeah, but I'm guessing there are a few products that maybe you don't want to send a video just because it's just at standard, maybe like a portrait or something. I don't know. We don't
So
know.
what about AR and VR? Have you looked into that or just video at this point?
We looked at it, but it was too expensive for us.
Well, that's why we're talking. I'm going to be making an introduction to our friends that I think we can get it done cheaper for them. That's exactly why I have my friends that we will be talking about with the revered.io. So that's a separate conversation, Nassim. Let me see if I can get the price to a point where it's worth it for you.
Yeah, but I wonder now that you ask that, I wonder if in B2B, let's say that when clients need to buy a few hundred products for their store, they're gonna want to see the product in VR, because I've
Why
used
not?
the
Yeah.
version for my house, but I wonder if, let's say, you want to swipe through each product in VR and actually see it. I don't know.
Well, I think the way that these VR tools work is, first of all, you can see the 3D model as an option. You don't have to do it. So I think it's more like, if they want 100 products, but they know they need 90, they're going to get the 90, but maybe the 10 that they're on the fence, they might say, hey, let's look at the 3D model, or let's look at the VR version, and let's make sure we're buying the right thing.
Well, I'll give you one application I was speaking with someone about that's B2B. It was really medical and dental equipment. And a lot of it has to be placed very specifically in offices and in operating rooms and clinics and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's also, really extraordinarily expensive for a lot of these businesses. So they have to kind of plot it out, and figure out where all the new, scanning equipment and whatnot is going to happen. And if they don't have that kind of experience, it just becomes much more complicated for them to close a sale. So that's like one of the circumstances I've seen recently that really made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, one of those devices could be like $100,000 easily, Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're going to spend that kind of money, you better be sure it's going to fit and all that kind of stuff.
Get it to the office, and you're like, oh well, we can't get this into the doesn't even fit into our in our little chairs for our dentistry or whatever. Yeah, well, this is awesome. So tell us about the progression of the company, because when we talked in May, you were still early in the journey. You had just kind of recently built this custom site. It was working. You were making money. You were able to kind of like survive the pandemic and get the orders online. Now you're getting more offline orders because people are coming back and they come to the showroom, and we've got the vaccine, so there's people are a little less scared. But tell us about kind of like this transition, or where you're at now and where you see things kind of going.
Sure. So to my sort of like surprise, we went back to showroom, like a big percentage of it. I thought it was going to stay mostly online, but it seems that clients still want to get connection with actually touch the product and be able to see them. So we were maybe 10% online before the pandemic. Then during the pandemic, the lockdown, we were 100% online just because nobody could travel into Panama. And now that everything is opening up, we're going to, I think, 60-40. We're at 60-40 right now, where 60 is online and 40 is in the showroom. There are a few clients that still say that they want to be able to touch a product and be able to see them in person.
But do you think that's also a mechanism of, if it's their first time buying it, hey, I want to make sure the quality is good. Once they've been there, then they order the second rep batch, they might be okay with online. Do you think that's...
Actually, surprisingly, most of the clients that buy the first time buy online. The second time, they usually, maybe not all, but the ones that come to the showroom, it's actually the second, the third, or the fourth.
That's very interesting.
Is Is that because they spend more the second time, or why do you think that is?
I'm guessing that the first time they want to do like a smaller, well, what I've seen in the data is that the first time they want to do like a small order and test it out, and then they go into buying like big orders, hundreds and thousands of dollars.
That makes sense. So it's like, okay, let's see if this thing will sell in our stores. We buy $1,000, we sold it for 3,000. Okay, we made some money, so this could work. But if we're gonna buy 100,000, like, we need to go talk to these guys and make sure they're not gonna, like, screw us over on a $100,000 order, and we gotta go make sure the quality. So that actually makes a lot of sense. And what's interesting about that is, would you argue that the website is a extremely important sales tool to bring in this new business, and then you're upselling through the in-person? Can you describe that a little bit more? You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like you mentioned. And I think that for marketing purposes, the website is amazing. And maybe for acquiring new clients is amazing. It's still a tool for a lot of clients, and we made sure that a lot of the features that are in the website are tools built for our client, taking our clients in mind. So looking at their processes and trying to automate a lot of what they do, they already do manually.
Yep.
And so that's why they're still using it. But I'm guessing that there's still a component that needs to be physical, that they need to go to a showroom, and you need to upsell them on a certain products, or like maybe if they buy a certain category, you need to add another category just to like grow the client.
I mean, I've always, and as someone who's obviously, only been doing pretty much e-commerce their whole career, I've always been a believer. I think the market, once it really, really matures, this is my theory, and Tim, I'm curious to hear your perspective, because you've been in this longer than me, is that the market will converge at 50-50 roughly, where, and we're not there yet across the board, but 50% online, and then 50%, in-store pickup, maybe a more streamlined digital experience in store, sale, like some sort of, physical experience. And it sounds like you guys are kind of converging towards that 50-50 split. And I think it's just going to depend on kind of the use case and what the type of
Yeah, 100%. And we have power users, don't get me wrong. We have a lot of power users that essentially go to the website every day and to see what's new, what can they buy for their stores, and they use our different tools that we have available for them. For example, like we have the ability for clients to download the content for marketing from the different brands and stuff like that. So we have power users that go every day, but I'm 100% sure that eventually it's going to be 50-50. Whatever they said back then about the retail apocalypse, and I think it's not going to happen. I think it's going to happen to certain stores in certain locations, but the flagship stores and their flagship malls are going to be there forever.
But digital is driving the in-store, though. So I think the retail apocalypse is misleading, because it's not an apocalypse. It's that if you fail to do digital, no one wants to go to your store, because you're not attracting them. Like you said, people buy $1,000 and then they come in the store and buy 100,000, so sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
No, I mean, I basically am with both of you guys on this. I mean, Isaiah knows this, but I used to be a retail guy before I did e-commerce. And then in the middle, I was a data guy working with catalog companies trying to get online. So I've kind of gone through all those transitions. Like I worked on LL Bean's first e-commerce site, like 20 or something years ago, right? But the way I see it, though, is very much what you guys are saying, that there's going to be some sort of a balance where, convergence is a great term for it, where, you have things that are kind of on one extreme or the other, but really in the middle, consumers want all of these different interactivity models, right? They want to understand, like, is it buy online, pick up in store? Is it buying in store and having delivered to multiple locations? Do I want to have a person? Do I want to have an automated live chat to get information? Do I need VR? All of these things are kind of different interactivity models that kind of along that spectrum. So I really think it's going to balance.
And the Amazon Go, and I think that's going to all roll up to the cloud, where I go in and I get my candy and I just walk out. Like I don't want to like wait in line for 10 minutes to get like 2 items. You know,
Yeah, I've
like,
got Amazon Go on my phone, and I've been to the stores, and I love it. I have to
is
say,
it
if
in
I
New
could do
York?
that
Is
at,
it in New York, or are
yeah,
they
it is.
where?
It's in multiple, like 14 locations or something
Really?
already in New York.
I don't
Oh,
think we have one in
really,
Boston.
it's really great. I mean, once you get used to it and you walk in and you grab something and you leave, it feels so great. You can't even believe it. It's like, I got my sandwich and I'm out the door.
Do you
It's
feel like
amazing.
you like cheated the system, or you did something special and you're like
Well, you know, I mean, I think, you know, and I think folks who've done this, you know, have this image in their head too. Basically, you know, I'm scanning in, you know, in the way I would when I go to Whole Foods with
like a
my,
gym? It's
you
like
know,
you're
little
going to a
QR
gym.
code, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like going to a
Scanning
gym
your
or something.
gym.
So
Yeah.
they know I'm there. They know who I am. It's connecting to whatever accounts, you know, that I've authorized. But then off I go. So really, if once people can get that model, you know, in retail, I mean, my God, I just love that kind of, you know, circular, you know, feeling to all this. I'd love to go into a furniture store or to Target or, you know, to anything and just be able to be scanned in, make my choices, you know, maybe tap something in or give a fingerprint and off I go, right? I mean, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although people get scared that the big brother government's going to take over and we're all going to be like working for Jeff Bezos because they have our fingerprints. So that's
I
True.
mean,
That's true. That's true. I agree with that. There may be a little bit to that, but I have to say the convenience part of it is so appealing to consumers for B2B as well. I mean, I
yeah.
think that there really is something compelling about that where you're authorizing somebody who works for a business to take certain actions, and they can't do something that they're not supposed to because it's like maybe through whatever they're getting scanned, right?
Their
It's almost like
ERP, it goes to Nassim's ERP and it says, "Hey, yeah,
exactly.
yeah."
yeah.
Exactly. So I love that model.
I wonder how much money they spend on R&D doing that, because I feel like it's feasible for them because they're like huge. I mean, but for the rest of the world doing something like that, it's gonna be
Well, they're
like,
gonna sell it. There, I believe that you can
yeah.
buy Amazon Go. You can license it from them, or they're gonna. I think.
You
Is that
can,
true? Yeah.
and you can license Amazon Go, and this is something I did not know at first, and I think I told our listeners this once before. You can license it, and Amazon is betting on this so much as a technology that they don't get any of the data. So when you license this and you're an independent store chain, they're just getting the license fees and whatever, and they want to have whatever partnership, but they're not getting customer data in the way they would
They're.
from their
I
Amazon Go
mean,
stores.
they're smart because if they're the best at it, like you said, Nassim, no one's gonna be able to. No normal company can build that themselves. You're gonna have to I mean, just like Shopify, you don't build Shopify, you buy Shopify. So that's where I see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think there'll be 3 or 4 competitors that'll pop up. Maybe one's Google, maybe one's Shopify. I mean, pretty much if you don't have $100 billion, you probably can't even compete in that space. But just like the cloud, there'll probably be 5 or 6 vendors that do it, but
I think
Amazon's way ahead. They're probably
I
what
think
five.
PayPal Venmo is actually working on this as well, which isn't a surprise, I suppose, given the
No,
space that they're in. But
they
they're
have a
working
hundred. They
on
have a
this,
hundred
and
billion dollars. So, or they're
Yeah.
worth two
yeah,
hundred billion dollars. So,
exactly.
But
yeah,
I think that's what we're also doing in B2B. So we're doing something that costs everybody else 10 times more. So for a normal company to get to
Mm-hmm.
where we are, it would cost them millions of dollars. For me, it's just me in my room having fun. So like,
but you have
That's good.
developers. Tell us about that. Don't you? I believe you've built a team, right? It's not just you developing. Can you
so
tell?
yeah, so we always had a team, but they were doing different stuff. So now we're moving the team into sort of the cloud e-commerce space, just because that's where the money is, I guess.
Yeah, and how do you guys manage that? Like, how do you we talk to them daily? Do you use project
Sure. So
management?
we
Yeah.
do project management. So I am also the lead developer and the project manager, and I manage essentially like all the. We have about 3 or 4 projects going on right now, and then I look at the requirements of the project every week and go over the task, the sprint of the week, and develop whatever feature we
So how
have.
often would you say you guys are deploying new features to
No,
that?
every week we have a deployment.
Wow.
So
What
every
time?
week.
What
Wow.
time?
So if you log into our website Friday at like 10 p.m., then it's probably not working, because every week we're deploying something new and we're trying different stuff.
So you're up
And,
at Friday at 10 p.m. every day. You're deploying. What about you?
and you laugh, but they're not like huge things. They're like very small pieces that essentially
No.
build.
I'm only laughing because you know you got to have some work life. But what about your wife or your? Do they want you to hang out on Friday night or?
Well, the good thing is that that part is automated, so I don't have to worry about it.
Gotcha. You've got the deployments down. All
Yeah,
right. So, yeah, man, there's just like so much to unpack here.
yeah,
I think we're going kind of like to the cutting edge here, which is why I really wanted to have Nassim on this call. So, tell us about the sales reps. That's what I want to
Hmm.
get into because I think when people hear Amazon Go and let's say this future world of me, Tim, and Nassim building the world, right? we would we would
Yeah,
we
let's
would have
do it.
we would have the Amazon Go. You walk in, you get your stuff. You buy online 50% of the time, but then the other time you go in, you get your stuff. Maybe, but I still think there's actually a very valuable role for the sales rep. So tell us about how you envision that, Nassim, and what they're doing and
sure,
obviously they're important to you guys like even though you guys are very sophisticated that they're
sure.
are they some of the most important people in the company, would you say, the sales team?
Well, I think that everyone is important, especially in a company that
For
has.
sure, of course.
But yeah, but they're a very important piece of the part of the problem. So when I first started, I was like, I'm gonna automate 100% of the sales rep, and I soon came into the realization, let's say like the start of the pandemic, that the sales force are the key, because they know their product better than everybody else. They know the products better than the manufacturers. They know the product better than the marketing team. They know the product better than everyone.
And they know what the
Um,
customer wants, right? And they
yeah,
want
and they know what the
Hmm.
customers want, and there's a certain piece to it that people still want people. So essentially, um, empower. So what we're focusing our effort now is not on building features to automate sort of like everything. So we're focusing on building features to empower the sales rep. So an example would be the video functionality, where we give the power of the sales rep to and essentially enhance sort of the product detail page. Or we're giving or we're now working on a feature that essentially enhances the sales rep ability to create sort of like custom recommendations, sort of like custom leads, custom sort of
Hmm.
like wish lists, essentially.
yeah, like, hey, we,
uh,
we saw you bought this, but here's 10 things we think you should buy.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we're giving the power to the sales rep to do it, because I feel like they're a very important part of the puzzle. I think that
How do you measure their success? Like, are you is whether they buy offline or online, like that all the sales rep, they're managing that and they get commission, or how do you make sure that they're like happy with their value that they provide? Because I think that's a challenge for a lot of companies is they don't know how to handle that. This
well,
if everything goes
I think
online, they're like, yeah.
they get commissions from whatever sales their clients buy. So essentially, even though let's say they do it online by themselves, they still get commission.
And do you
So
assign clients to them? Like every client is tagged to a sales rep? Is that
yeah, so every client is assigned into a sales rep, and then every sales rep has to make sure that client has content for it, his marketing campaigns. It's connected to our marketing department to be able to give them support on their whatever they're doing. And they have to make sure that they get the order in time. They have to make sure basically the entire life cycle of the client is up to the sales rep, and that's why they get the commission from whatever they buy, because
yeah.
they're in sort of in charge. That's their.
Yeah. That
Hmm.
makes
I don't know
sense.
if I'm answering your
No,
question.
you are. That's
Yeah,
yeah. So whether they yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. It's like the sales rep has a book of business, they have clients, they get new clients, but it's their client. Doesn't matter if they buy online or offline. Like that's just sale is a sale, right? As long as you guys get
yeah,
paid the money, right? That's
Yeah.
yeah. But I think that at first my hope. my entire life was let's automate the sales rep. But now when you see what's going on and when you see how much more value the sales rep can add, then you're like, okay, I'm gonna automate their life so that they can create more value for the clients.
So tell us about, did that, and I have a feeling that this is, I know the answer to this, but did that drastically improve the success of the features once you started change from trying to automate the sales rep to empowering them?
100%, just because they have the contact with their clients and they're telling them
Yep.
what's new, they're sending them the blog post, they're sending them whatever feature we have new. So yeah, 100%, the adoption rate increased dramatically.
Wow.
So I have another question that, and I'm not sure if you answered this in the other episode, but you're in Central and South America. What about the U.S.? Are you thinking of working up here?
um, Maybe one day, but no,
Okay.
just because maybe one day, but I'm inclined to say no, just because the US is a very complicated market for a Latin American company. There's so many competitors that have like a really large, that own essentially the space, that it's very hard for us to compete. Just because, let's say, for a US company, you're manufacturing products for 200 million people. I think there's 200 million people in the US, right?
Yeah, a little more actually, but yeah.
Yeah. In Latin America,
336.
so you're manufacturing for a lot less, or price is slightly higher from what you get in the US.
Gotcha. So you think
Yeah.
it's just,
So
yeah.
no, I just like what you're doing. I mean, I think that's part of the reason I'm asking this question. I really like your approach. I like what you're offering. I like how tech savvy you are, but really focusing on improving things for the end consumer and improving things for your sales team at the same time. I mean, all of these things are such big positives, and there really aren't that many businesses that are really covering all those bases well anywhere.
Yeah, that's why I'm
From my
saying.
understanding.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
why I think they're, in some ways, they're more advanced than a lot of the companies in the US. I think my advice to
you
you would
are.
be, like you said, I agree. There's, especially in that Christmas space, you have all these very competitive companies here. Maybe there's a niche for you guys to carve out a subset of the products that you can be competitive with and start with that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a big initiative. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge initiative. I'm guessing that, let's say, if Walmart or like a big company in the US wants to target like Latin American clients in the US, they probably are going to buy from us if they ever find us. But for us, it will be like a huge thing to go into the US. It will probably be like, yeah, it would take a lot of effort.
yeah. So you're just focusing on growing South America for now, and
Yeah,
maybe down the road you guys will do it when you're have more
yeah,
capital. Makes sense.
exactly.
Cool. Well, what do you see coming with B2B? Where, like, now that you guys are much more mature with this, what do you see coming? Where do you see this going in the next, year or two or 3 years?
Honestly, so I've been thinking a lot about the future these past few weeks, mostly because I had my first daughter in October, and I'm having
Oh
another
wow!
one the next
Congratulations.
Oh,
year.
congratulations.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And most of what I've been thinking about the B2B in the future is that there's so much uncertainty that it's better to focus on the right now. There's so many things that we can do right now to get a lot more value into our clients, that thinking about the future, maybe it's not our best option,
It's
just
too
because.
uncertain. It's too uncertain. So tell us about the right now. What do you? I mean, because the right now, but like you said, I mean, it takes time. It's not like you can launch all these features tomorrow. So what is that?
Yeah, so what we're doing is that we're talking to a lot of our clients, and we're looking at whatever so most of our clients buy from us until, let's say that most of our clients do their buying process, or their product selection process until a certain point. What we're focusing on is actually extending that process so that we can automate more of what they already do after they buy from us. So that let's say that if we automate that part, we can create more value from them and having spend less time buying the products. So the reason for this, because we notice, is that the more we remove the friction from the buying process, the more they're going to buy from us.
Hmm.
And we noticed that when we moved into a PWA, when you move into like a frictionless sort of like application where things move dramatically fast and the information is already there when you want it, the friction decreases so much that people buy more. And that's what we're doing. We're focusing on
Can you talk about what the after sale is? What is that? What, can you explain that? You said you're
Sure.
gonna.
So for us, it would be anything from, let's say, the marketing content that you put in, let's say, like your social media accounts, to, let's say, now we build a feature where you can create sort of uh, an inspiration to show how the products will be displayed in the store. And before they did that, but they did that very manually. They essentially imported all the products into, like, let's say, like PowerPoint, and they like did sort of like a,
So you're giving them tools to help them sell the products,
yeah.
essentially.
So
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to be in the entire sort of like funnel.
So not you're like, hey, here's not only here's the product, but here's how we can make it so it's easier for you to sell it faster,
Yeah,
basically.
we want to make it easier for you in every step, every part of the way. We want to make it easier for you to
Wow.
sell. We want to make it easier for you to put it into your store. We want to make it easier for you in everything, in every part of the way.
It's
And
really impressive. I wasn't even.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I didn't even think that, but it kind of makes sense. I think sometimes we see that where they want kind of like they call it, and at least in the US, they call it like the dealer portal, and they want to upload materials for their dealers or their customers to have materials to make it easier for them to sell. But I think you're thinking of it as a much deeper level of like, how can we empower them to kind of take this information or these designs and put it into their store and
yeah,
or whatever it is to help them sell it. You know?
Well,
that's
yeah,
my.
and
Sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead. No, I was just going to add on to what Isaiah was saying, because the distinction I always make is that it's very static. Things don't move. Like when you place something into a dealer portal, it puts everything on the dealer. The salesperson, they have to go in and do something, right? And it's really all just up to them. It's not necessarily guided. There's no
Yeah, they might not even know it's
education.
there. They might a lot of times they probably don't even know it's there, you know.
Yeah,
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's a very strange model in a way if you want people to sell.
yeah. I mean, 100%. That's where the sales rep comes in, and they're we do like constantly, we update them constantly on what we're doing and what's coming next, so that they can tell the clients what's new. And for example, yesterday I was logged into Mixpanel, which is what we use for analytics, and I was looking at a specific client that was using our new tool to build up your survey, your inspiration. And I was looking at the way he was using it. And when I went to talk to him, he was telling me, well, I already do this, but I do it in PowerPoint. You just made it easier for me. And I'm like, that's amazing. That's what we're trying.
That's awesome. Wow, that's really cool. So it sounds like the secret here is work with your sales reps to kind of figure out what the customers want and just continue to make it easier for the sales rep and the customers, and just it's a constant ongoing evolution. And then the developers and the project managers, should just be working with them to make sure the requirements match their
Yeah.
expectations. Would you agree? Like, I'm just trying to keep it very simple for people
Yeah.
that.
I mean, it sounds complex, but it's actually very simple. It's just talking to yourself, talking to your clients, and talking to your sales rep. That's it. There's no
Mm-hmm.
secret sauce.
Yeah.
Basically, it.
And
Talking
if
to
you see
people.
patterns, I
That's
think
pretty good.
is it one thing I just want to bring up, is it important that you see a pattern, because you don't necessarily want to build a complicated feature for one customer that wants this one thing. Can you talk about that? Because I could see that happening. We're like, oh, this customer said they wanted this, but it just happens that it's only that one customer, and you wasted, a bunch of money on something that when really there's 100 other things that everyone needs.
Yeah, I think that there's a great book called The Mom Test, which essentially specifies what I'm about to say, that you need to talk to maybe like a few clients to get sort of the entire picture, not just from one client. We
Gotcha.
actually made that mistake at a certain point where one client said that he needed this, and then he was the only one using it. So
Yeah, so you basically built him a custom feature, and it probably wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, this is amazing. I think we're gonna have to have you on again in a year, roughly a year, because it seems like every year you guys are gonna be making like, I'm sure you'll have all sorts of crazy new things that we haven't thought about.
Yeah.
So
I love that idea, by the way, and you know, I've really learned a lot from this too, and I really like your enthusiasm and really how much you've accomplished, you know, in only a year, you know, from everything that we've been talking about here. So, love to have you back, and I also think some of our other guests we might want to have back, you know, on 1 year anniversaries just to see how they're doing. It might be kind of fun.
yeah,
Yeah,
a lo-
this was really fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
I learned a lot. So we'll definitely have you back again, and I got some emails to follow up with you because I think there's some things that, you know, especially on the AR stuff, I want to see if this, because the exact problem that you described, that's what we're trying to solve.
That's
So,
great.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, guys. This is amazing.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.